Welcome back to the newest edition of Relative Talk. I'm your host, John Laloja. Special guest today, Jacob R. Sellers.
Yes.
Jake, how are you, buddy?
Good. How are you, John?
Fantastic. You and I are we go
So,
back a ways. So we met in
but always
2011.
good.
Dude, your camera is so blurry. It's
Is it?
insane. Good thing this is a podcast.
Okay.
We go back to 2011 where we started doing improv, became friends, performed for many years together. And then I introduced you to my cousin, Martha. You ended up marrying her. So you've been indoctrinated. You are now family. You were once a friend, now family. And you have a young son, Eli, who's adorable. Did you see your life taking this route when you met me? When you said I came in late, Danny Zuko-esque with my sunglasses, which I don't remember doing.
Well, you didn't just come in late. You weren't at the first class, and you came to the second class late. So you were extremely late. But and you walked in and you took your glasses off and sunglasses, and then folded them on the bar, as like people were just like the class was going on. And I thought,
was there a scene happening while I did it?
Hope that guy has a beautiful cousin I could marry.
I think your initial reaction was, I don't like that guy.
I don't remember that. I don't remember not liking you.
Oh, I thought you said that at one point. You're like, what?
No, that came much later.
Yeah, that's true. After you got to know me, you're like, oh yeah, this guy's a piece of shit.
No, I could not imagine, like, because we were friends for what, like 4 years before you introduced me to Martha, and
yeah, so 4 years. When did you meet her? 2015.
2015. So yeah, 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years.
And
I was in St. Louis for grad school in 11 and 12, moved back to Chicago in 13, and then you visited in 15, came over to our apartment when I was living with Frank.
Yes.
And Martha had seen that, she had messaged me on Facebook. She's like, oh, your friend's cute. She's like, is he single? I'm like, he's very single. He's very single. He would I go, and he would love to talk to you.
Yeah.
I go, so, if you're gonna come up here, like he'll make a trek. So you came up from St. Louis to meet her, right?
Yeah, and then whenever I came in,
just think about that. How insane is that? That some people in these dating apps won't even go. Will set their 3-mile radius. You went from St. Louis to Chicago just to meet my cousin.
I'm a gentleman, but I actually because I took that trip. This 2001 Dodge truck I was driving completely broke down. So I ruined a car to come see her. So I'm really glad it worked out.
That's true.
I drove my truck to Chicago. I drove back, and then I was like, it's making a weird noise now. And they're like, I don't know anything about cars or mechanics, but they said that the engine block broke. So it was just completely done. So, but whenever I came up to visit her, I walked in and it was, you let me in, and then Frank was up there, and Frank had invited in the DoorDasher guy, and he was sitting in the apartment, and Martha would not.
That was Frank's MO. Go ahead.
No, she didn't even address me for the first hour or so. 30 minutes she was talking to the delivery guy, and then finally she was just like, hey. I'm like, hey.
You're like, hey, I drove up in a broken down car to see you. I drove 4.5 hours.
And now she's making a smoothie.
That was Frank's MO. He would always invite, anytime we ordered food, he would always just invite the guy to hang out. And it was just not a fan of that. I just I was like, I really don't want to hang out with this guy. And they're like, yo, come on in, have some of the food. I'm like, oh my God. It was so annoying. He would do it all the time.
I never lived with Frank, of course, but I
Ugh.
did have a roommate like that. Well, Steve Rains. But it wasn't like DoorDashers. He invited.
Who's a crazier who's a crazier roommate? Reigns at that at peak,
Mhm.
both peak roommate, like Frank at his peak or Reigns at his peak.
Rains. Rains invited in a homeless guy
Really?
to sleep for the
Yeah,
night.
he's.
None of us were there. Any of my belongings could have been stolen.
Oh my god, that's so funny. So he invited a homeless guy to stay with you and Bobby.
Yeah,
Bobby didn't actually live there, right?
he did. Bobby didn't pay rent there. Bobby's rent was so we had this set up where it was me.
He do some jokes for you.
Yeah. Well, me and Steve and our mutual friend Zach Jahoviak. Zach Jahoviak found the apartment. It was the fifth story of a building downtown St. Louis, the Landing, which is a historic district, which is like no one lives there. It's just bars and casinos. But he knew the guy that owned the condo on the fifth floor, and so the three of us moved in, and then Bobby, you know, started coming over night after night, and then we just didn't tell him to leave. We didn't want him to leave, but he wasn't paying rent. He would just bring toilet paper and like random odds and ends for like the kitchen, and that was his rent.
Oh my god. Uh, my favorite story is when he broke both of his legs and
Yeah,
then he fell out that back window and like broke. Like
yeah, that
what
was not
else did?
that was
Can you
6 weeks.
explain that? What?
Yeah, so it was we went out on the town one night and
Mm-hmm.
came back, and it was just me, Steve, Bobby, and a group of other improv people. Um, and there was it
Steve
was a
Rains now
yeah,
lives in Chicago, is married, and Steve is one of our friends.
yeah, and so Zach Johoviak lived in a bedroom on the first floor, and there was a loft that Steve and I shared. We just put like a screen in the like those foldable screens down the middle of this room, but the loft had an opening like a big window encasement, and it was just open air, and then you could reach technically the ceiling, which was about 20 feet tall, and running across were like these beams. This building was built in like 1849, and Steve and Bobby weeks before had this conversation about if they could, you know, climb this beam across the loft and come back. And Steve said that
Mm-hmm.
he could do it. So that night he tried to do it and then shimmied with his hands like halfway across the apartment. And then everybody was like shouting at him, like, go back. Like, you cannot, like, this is so dangerous. And he was about to turn back and then wanted to like shimmy down one of the beams that went down to the ground. And we didn't want him to shimmy down it because he would get splinters. Like, but we did not know that that was by far preferable to what was about to happen. But so instead, he started climbing backwards, but he had been on this beam for probably 2 minutes at least at this point. So his arms just gave out and just dropped, however many feet. And instead of like collapsing, just stood straight up on his ankles. And he shattered both of his heels and broke one of his ankles. And
Okay, so he
yeah,
did. So he did that. So he shattered both of his and broke one of his ankles and his heels.
yeah. So,
Okay,
but everybody,
so that happened.
yeah,
Then another weekend, he was leaning against the door. Tell that part while he has broken both of his
right.
ankles.
Well, I mean, before we get to that night that happened, all of us had been drinking, so nobody could take him to the hospital. Nobody knew how bad it was. But all we knew that is if we tried to stand him up, he would just scream bloody murder until we put him back down. So the only bathroom in this loft was, the main bathroom, but it was all like red marble. It looked like Scarface's bathroom, but it was just. And then the bedroom that was on the main floor that Zach Jahoviak lived in between those two was just a enormous closet. This apartment back in the 90s was featured in a St. Louis magazine for how beautiful it was. And like there was 17th century furniture. And then fast forward 15 years, and our coffee table were 2 snow tires and a piece of plywood. But anyway, Steve, so we couldn't drive him to the hospital that night, so he just slept in that big walk-in closet with his feet propped up on a clothes basket. Uh, so Steve was gone for 6 weeks. He told his parents, hopefully, his dad doesn't listen to this, but he told his parents a completely different story of how he broke it because he didn't want to say it was he was
Uh,
was involved. So he spent 6 weeks away. He
sure.
came back for our New Year's Eve party, and there was this stairwell that people would smoke in. And so Steve was on
Yeah.
crutches and had 2 boots on, and he made his way down the steps with these crutches. And there was this door that led out that was technically between the 4th and 5th floor, but you would open it and there would be no steps, just a ladder that was below the door that you can't really see. But so whenever we first got in this apartment, we thought that the door would open and we would go down there sometimes, but then one day we just couldn't open it. And for a few months, it's just like, oh, I guess they sealed it shut. I'm like, oh, whatever. So Steve went down there to smoke a cigarette and then propped his crutches on the wall and was like, oh, this door's safe. And then like just leaned back against it with his cigarette. And it was like a Buster Keaton movie. It flipped open and he just like without a sound just fell back and down 10 feet onto the roof of the next building. And it was, as soon as he hit, I was told he just heard like, oh, oh, and he thought he broke his pelvis, but luckily he did not break anything. And I was upstairs when all this happened, and then the only thing that I heard was Bobby rush in the front door. You just hear, Jake, Steve fell again, and we were like, oh no.
Oh god, dude, him explaining that story to me, like it makes me laugh so hard. The fact that he broke both his ankles and then fell. he broke both of his legs. Oh,
Well, Frank had done nothing
my
like
god.
that, so
No. Unfortunately I can't disclose publicly what did
I can
or
tell you
what
what I can tell you what
or
you
what we were involved in, or who was in our apartment when I woke up at like 7 a.m. to get coffee. I'm like, oh, a bunch of random strangers who haven't gone to sleep.
I can
Good morning.
what you and Frank did
great.
not do. You and Frank, I don't think ever cleaned your bathtub. Not once.
We cleaned it, dude. That place was unclean. You could clean it, and then it would be dirty 10 minutes later. There's nothing you could do.
Yes, you
Yes,
could.
there was black mold. There was black mold that was just ingrained in that tub, and there was nothing you could do. We cleaned it. All right. At some point, I gave up.
Do you know what you could do? Is what I did and scrubbed it for 3 hours. You said whenever I got there, I'm like, John, like, what's up with this bathtub? And you were like, yeah, like, I mean, we cleaned it and then we just stopped. I'm like, did you stop the first day you moved in? Like,
so for reference, Frank and I, my cousin Frank, check out episode 6, I think. He's my cousin. We were roommates from 14, I think, to 16. Mm-hmm. And then you moved in 16 or 17?
16. Frank and I
16 in the fall of
a month.
Right, overlapped a month. So you moved into that apartment. And this place could accumulate dust faster than any other apartment I had ever seen in my life. You could like literally dust something. You could like swipe it and then like look again in like 5 minutes, and there would just be dust everywhere. There was nothing. This place was like, it was a shitty apartment on the north side of Chicago.
It was a pretty, besides the dirtiness, it was a pretty nice apartment. It was in a desired part of Chicago.
It was in a great location. The location was amazing.
Yeah, maybe it was just the two
location
people
was great.
that lived there. that made it uncleanable. That counter, that kitchen
Probably.
counter was like, it felt like someone made it
Was
out of bug.
sticky.
Yeah. It was like, instead of
Yeah, it was so
linoleum, it
gross.
was bug
You
paper.
had to like chisel. Yeah, we had spilled so many sauces on there, so you literally had to like chisel off the stickiness. There was like several like glazed layers of like spilled drinks and like sauce.
And thank God you met Alex, because of the nights that, we spent there, your culinary masterpiece was just 2 microwave hot dogs every night in that sticky, dirty kitchen.
I had so little self respect. I was like, I'm not cleaning. This is just give you an idea of where my life was at this point in my self worth. I was like, I'm not cleaning. I'm not doing any extra work. I'm not even cooking. Like I'm getting this pack of hot dogs, shoving
Wow.
it in the microwave, and just eating it. I would just dip. I didn't even. Sometimes I wouldn't even pour it. I would take the hot dog on a fork and dip it in. I would unscrew the cap of the bottle and just dip it right in the bottle. I wouldn't even pour it.
You couldn't
I was
be
just
bothered to just turn over a bottle.
no. I was like, I'm not doing. Like I was like, that's not. I go. This is how my life is right now, and we're just gonna ride it out, and this is how it's gonna be.
Disgusting.
My life is a little different now.
Yeah.
So speaking of life changes, you're a new dad.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'm a dad. My son just turned 2. Your son Eli, what is it? Is he
He's
two
about
months?
3.5 months.
3.5 months. Sorry, three and a
Yeah.
half months. I also haven't seen you in forever because you don't show up to family functions anymore. But
False. Go ahead.
I can't. I listen. I can't fault you for that because after September 18th, you won't see me for a while.
Yeah, you have to
but
quarantine for a long time.
yeah, yeah. This will be as much. This will be the only interaction we'll have for a while after Thea goes in the hospital. But so you're a new dad.
Yes.
How's it feel?
Feels great.
What are your first impressions? You know? Give me the
Um,
lowdown.
yeah, well, I mean, it was a lot of transitions, a lot of life transitions right before he was born. So he was born April 21st, and
Mm-hmm.
um, so he was born April 21st. Our apartment we left May 19th. That was our
Yeah, there
last
was a
day.
lot of stuff happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I started a new job May 22nd. Um,
Jesus.
and that interview for that place, like the screening interview, I actually took in the bathroom of Martha's hospital room, um, which
Good
was
God.
which was amazing. Um, but yeah, and then it was, so I had to be down here May 22nd, and then she stayed up with Eli at your uncle Carrie and Aunt Virginia's place, and stayed there for like a month, and I would drive up on weekends. So like the first month he was just a very tiny baby, and you know then like I was only seeing him like a weekend at a time, as he was kind of, as babies start to develop their personality, start to look not just like every baby looks when they come out. um
Right. You
yeah,
start. I mean,
yeah,
for the audience, like this this baby looks exactly like you. Like he looks exactly
yeah.
like you. He looks nothing like Martha. It's
it's
crazy how much like a Sellers that kid is. It's
it's
unbelievable,
selfishly, it's the biggest ego boost, because people always say he's so cute, he looks just
and
like you.
he is. He's adorable. Yeah,
He is. and
it's a good feeling.
and like, Martha and Eli moved down here June 24th, I think. So it was a good
Hmm.
month of us being apart. But um, since he's been down here, he has so much personality, and he's so
What
smiley.
is his personality?
He's just goofy. He's just like, he
Yeah,
smiles.
that's how Theo. That's how Theo is. He's silly. He loves to be silly.
Yeah, he's very
Yeah.
particular. Eli's
Hmm.
very particular, depending on like where, even like where you put his leg as you're holding him.
Yeah.
And he'll be fussing, but then like very, very smiley. Martha has such a good regiment with his sleep, that she started like,
Yeah.
I don't know all the specifics, but started sleep
Sleep
training
training.
very early.
Yeah.
And
Alex too.
Yeah.
very early, immediately. Yep. Teresa
And
and
it,
Anna like swear by it,
yeah,
and yeah, they followed that. They talk also too all the time, and they were aligned on a lot of that stuff.
yeah.
Like sleep
And it,
training
it,
is very
it
important.
helps so much. And, you know,
It's huge. It
yeah.
helps you, like
Hmm.
to for you to have some sort of schedule and regimen, and for you to get sleep.
Yeah. And I've been, over the last couple weeks, I mean, Martha's a labor and delivery nurse, so, a lot of things having to do with the baby, she, had down pat. And, I'm the youngest of three boys, and I haven't really been around anybody who had babies. So he's like the first baby that I've been around consistently. So while there is some
Mm-hmm.
instinct involved there, a lot of, the particulars I've had to learn. So over the past few weeks, I've been starting to take on, some of that responsibility, like dream feeding, or whenever he wakes up, taking care of him then, putting him to sleep. And, it's really been great. Like the more responsibility that I've taken over with that and the more time that I spend with him doing
You have
those,
more confidence.
oh yeah, more confidence, but I'm just the bond there to where like now
Yes.
I just look at him like, you're the sweetest baby in the world.
Yeah.
Like
It's
you're just,
great.
I'm just, people always say it that you're filled with like, oh, it completely changes you. Yeah, and I don't really feel that. I feel like, there's no new feelings that have with him that I didn't have before. It's that I just feel everything deeper than I did before.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's super deep.
Yeah.
Like you would you would do things for him that you probably wouldn't do for another person.
Yeah. I mean, he's only 3.5 months right now, so all I have to do is burp him and feed him. So I mean, he hasn't put that to the
I
test.
know.
But
I
I
know.
will do those things.
Of course. Of course. It's interesting you say that too because Alex, I'm one of, I have 27 first cousins. So I was around, and one of the older ones, I was around babies all the time. I'm also one of five kids.
Mm-hmm.
So, Alex is one of two and didn't really have a big extended family. And they were also in Chicago. She grew up in LA. So, like you, she really didn't have a lot of experience with young kids or babies.
Mm-hmm.
So when Theo's like upset or having a tantrum or crying, I'm like, this is just what they do. It's like not a
Right.
big deal. But she initially she was like, what's wrong? Like, and I was like, this is just like he's just mad. Like,
Yeah.
just let him cry it out. Like it's fine. You know what I mean? Like
I
I was so I got she was like, oh, it may have looked like I didn't care. Of course, obviously, of course I do. But I had so much experience with kids being
Mhm.
like, just jerks or having just a tantrum, just because they're a toddler. It's like, this is just as a kid being two. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Versus like something, more.
yeah. I it's been awesome. I mean, I had my first like parent panic attack last night. Not that I'm a
Do you ever
stranger.
go in there and see if he? Do
Oh,
you ever go in there and see if he's breathing?
that's what happened. So I was last night.
Yeah,
Martha had already gone to bed,
of
and
course.
I was watching him on the baby monitor,
The
uh,
monitor. Yep.
and he hadn't moved for a really long time, and I didn't want to go wake him up.
I've done this so many times.
He was sleeping so still. And sometimes whenever you're looking at the monitor, he's in this sleep suit, so you can see it like with his breathing inflate and deflate. I wasn't seeing
And you
that.
did it. You didn't see the up and down. You're like, I don't want to wake him up, but God damn it, I'm gonna go in there and see if he's
Right. And
breathing.
I know, at least from just things that I've heard, that it's just like, oh, if you let that go for if somebody's not breathing for 5 minutes, you're donezo. So it had
Yeah,
already been 5 minutes, and I'm freaking out. I don't want to wake him up.
your your senses are with your
Yeah.
child are so high, you're on high alert
Right.
all the time,
And
like really high alert.
Martha's so comfortable with it, and she was already sleeping, like comfortable with looking after babies, especially him, with how much she's done. That like I just try to wake her up. I'm like, Martha, Eli hasn't moved in a while. It's making me really nervous. She's like, what? And I'm like, he's not moving. She's like, he's fine. And I'm like, okay. And then of course it happens that I look at the monitor right after I try to wake her up, and he's moved. So I'm like,
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's totally normal. What's has surprised you the most about becoming a new dad?
I was like before whenever we found out that she was expecting, and a lot of my anxieties were front loaded to where I was worried. Just you hear people talk about how much work it is, how your life is going to change, uh,
Yes.
and I was just like, oh, that's going to be very very stressful. And after after she had him, and especially after I'm spending more time and taking on more responsibility with him, it it surprised me. I'm like, one, my life hasn't changed that much. I mean, it's more schedule based, but like that work is not overwhelming or stressful. So I'm just like, because I feel like that's one of my skills. Like as soon as I had a baby, like I'm good at caring for other people, and just like being around him, I'm like, oh, this is not a problem at all. So that was nice.
Yeah.
And also like his crying, like whenever it's my child crying, it's not annoying. Before we had a baby, whenever I heard a baby crying, I could probably go like 2-3 minutes without it being annoying. And
Yeah.
now I'm like, whatever, that's fine.
Yeah. On planes now, I would have such disdain for those parents with those kids crying. I'd be like, God, why don't those parents do something about that? And
Yeah,
now, if I'm on a plane without my son and I hear a kid crying, I just immediately have just immediate empathy for those parents. Be like, those poor parents. I totally know what
yeah.
they're going through, and I have so much more compassion for them. Um, what's it like being back in St. Louis?
It's been good. We there's been a lot of
Has
work
it
on the
changed?
house. I
Yeah.
feel like it's hotter, but maybe that's everywhere.
Well, it's global warming. The
Yeah,
whole Earth is getting hotter.
that's not true, John. It's not a thing.
That's right.
That's
I
that's what my
forgot.
neighbors say. But no. So like being down in St. Louis, it's been a lot of construction around the house. So most of who
Yeah.
I've seen has been my family. Um, but
How's that been?
it's been it's it's been good. No, it's so my
Yeah.
whenever we bought the house at the end of March, and so it was just kind of sitting here until I came down uh, in May. But what started off as just changing like the placement of the door in the basement turned into like a complete basement gut and starting over,
Right.
which
Yeah. I heard all about it.
I'm incredibly fortunate that I have family that knows how to do that and is helping out, and like we're getting it,
Oh my
you know,
God.
get it
Somebody to do that for
done.
free? That's
Yeah.
unbelievable. That's You're
Uh,
saving thousands and thousands of dollars. It's incredible.
yeah, so it's my dad doing a lot of that work, and then my uncle Tom, who's my dad's older brother, uh,
Mm-hmm.
my aunt Barb's husband, Rick Hitler, and um, and my cousin Dusty.
So your aunt's husband's name is Rick Hitler, right?
Yeah, but it has two T's in it, so it's different. It's
Oh,
not
okay. That
no
helps.
relation, but it's been good. I mean, it's a lot of getting texts or phone calls from one of them saying that they're coming over the next morning, or like a new task around the house that I need to do when I get home.
Sure.
But I'm fine with that.
Okay. So are you doing like a new solo character sketch show in St. Louis?
Yeah. So Logan Short, our mutual friend, invited me
Mm-hmm.
to do that. So that's happening beginning of September, and I'm excited about it because it's doing it again. Incredibly nervous because I haven't really done it in
In
you know four
years, right?
4 years.
Yeah.
I've been doing improv, but it's not like written, performative stuff.
Right.
And to
This is
write
just
the project,
characters that you've kind of formulated, and have you written it out, or you just kind of know the beats?
I'm really just at the ideation phase, because it's
Yeah.
5 minutes, and I'm excited to do it, but 5 minutes is a long time. So it's, the thought in my head is, what character could I use to fill up 5 minutes that won't get old for the people watching it?
Or do you want to do multiple characters for a minute or 30 seconds?
Yeah. So I mean, I have a couple that are rolling around in my head, but we got to save them for the show, John.
Sure. Yeah. No. Of course.
But I'll
I saw you were
probably
doing that. I
start
thought that was
doing
awesome.
more. Yeah, I'll probably start doing more stuff. I've talked to Kate Cole, and we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about doing a 2-person improv show. I'm excited
Nice.
to get back into it because I've been doing it since what 2011 until 2020,
Mm-hmm.
and without
Yeah.
any break, and then I haven't really done it for like 3 years. So except for like maybe a handful of shows, but it's amazing how
Sure.
much rust can build in that time.
Oh God. Yeah. It's like working out or whatever. It's like you gotta you. It's like a muscle that you have to really work, and it's amazing how rusty you can get.
Yeah.
Um, how's the comedy scene in St. Louis right now, and how's it different than Chicago?
Um, I can't, I haven't spent a great deal of time in St. Louis comedy since I've moved.
Has it changed since you and I have been there? Like, is St. Louis different, or is it about the same?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the improv shop has grown a lot. So an improv theater in St. Louis that whenever you and I had started was in the top floor of a bar in downtown St. Louis. So very, very small.
Isn't it
And
incredible how far it's come? It's crazy. It's now they have their own space.
they've shifted around a lot to many different spaces, and now it's bigger than it's ever been. So there's two separate theaters in one large building, and the community's
Mm-hmm.
grown super large, and it's changed in the sense of whenever I'd started in St. Louis, one of the reasons I'd gone to Chicago was that people were saying that you couldn't really make things happen in St. Louis. Like, yeah, it's a great art city and all that, but there's no end result. But there's a lot of people since then that have really changed that. I mean, Tina Deball, Rafe Williams, Bobby J. Cox, all have been doing,
Sure.
stand up work, and they've done, they're really, growing their following and like making their living from that.
Yeah,
So it's awesome to see how much in that time opportunities open up down here.
definitely.
But in
So you and
Chicago,
I started at the improv shop.
yeah.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, it just in
So
Chicago, I
explain
mean,
Chicago.
yeah, and I don't, of course, you spent a lot of time in it, but my thoughts there is like separate from how St. Louis was in Chicago, very obvious that things can happen from performing, especially at Second City or IO, or
Yeah.
some other theaters that are there. And I think because of that, the dynamics changed a little bit from what I had started doing in St. Louis, which was like doing it for not only the love of it, but to express yourself artistically and to like really just treat
Mm-hmm.
improv or just performative comedy as the art itself, whereas in Chicago it was a little bit more vying for stage time, a little bit
Getting
more
something. Yeah.
less
A little
less
bit more business.
yeah, much less creatively supportive,
Yeah.
and that was difficult for me.
Yeah, because in St. Louis, you're just everyone. There is no entertainment industry, and you're just doing it, and you're just trying to get good at your craft, which is what you should be doing in general. And then in
Right.
Chicago, you start doing that, but then a person that used to do improv with is now on a tour. Is on a cruise ship boat on Second City, and you're like, what?
Right.
They're making a living off of this, like,
Right.
and then it changes your whole perspective, and which is not necessarily a good thing.
Right.
Um, it can kind of rattle you. So you and I were on an improv group called Meowsers, which we formed in 2011.
Mhm.
Myself, Pat Niday, Lauren Cox, Jacob McGuire. So the five of us. Very fun. Some of the best times of my life. What was your favorite comedy experience with that group that you can remember?
Um. Uh.
Go.
I just Meowsers was cool because it was just I mean, just like anything, what makes it fun is that it was just a group of like-minded people who were very supportive, and like the five of us, whenever we got together, were just very goofy, and for whatever reason, that worked well on stage. People seem to have liked it, so you know, um, but we went to a lot of places. Quincy was fun. Whenever we went up to your alma
That
mater,
was that was a very fun show. Yeah,
um,
that was great.
we did. I don't think you were here for this, but Meowsers did like a year and a half run at the improv shop like once a week,
Yeah.
and and
Yeah.
you had come
You guys
down
did
for
a
a few
lot of
shows there.
shows.
Um,
Yeah.
and that was awesome. That was after the improv shop had already gotten its own space, and
Yeah.
and we did a run at Pat's. I think that was before you had
hmm
left, and that's kind of what
I
jolted
did
me.
one show. I think I
Oh,
done one show there at Pat's. Yeah.
um, but another fun memory is we would rehearse in Pat Niday's basement in his where is he in it's not what's it called? Where did he live?
Balsam.
No.
I
What was
can't
it?
remember, but do you remember?
University
Here's
City.
another memory. Do you remember? Yes. Do you remember also before Pat's basement? I had as a grad assistant,
Yeah.
I had reserved the study hall, which was a glass. You could totally see through it. And this was for people studying, and I would reserve it. I had absolutely no authority to reserve this room. This is for
Yeah.
people studying, and
Yeah.
I would reserve it so our team could do improv. I can't believe I used to do some of the things I did. I would never do those things now. It's insane. Like the
I
the
now that you
just
say
dumb
that,
youth, like
yeah, now that
the
you say that, I
balls
do
that takes to
agree.
be like, it's crazy. And we would be like, pretending we were like wild animals, and people would be walking through the hallway, we'd be doing the most insane shit.
Yeah.
And people would be like trying to get in studying. I'd be like, sorry, this room is reserved. And then I'd go back to playing like a gay penguin or something like that. I'd be like, no, 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 you can't study in here. This room is reserved. I reserved this room. I'm a grad assistant. I think I said that a couple times. I was like, it's okay, I'm a grad assistant. And
During
then
our
we would
rituals,
just be
I
like,
remember you
then
doing.
we'd be like fake dry humping each other in like some
Yeah.
dumb scene. Be like, this is important. This You can't study here. We're doing really good, really, really important work here.
I remember that you had signed or you had like put together a show at the college that you were working at,
In the
and
basement?
in the basement, and there was a big stage there,
Yeah.
but it wasn't really a stage. It wasn't a theater. It was just a stage inside of
No.
what like was a cafeteria. So like we had done a few shows to
Right.
where it was just like 10 people watching, and then like another 50 people eating at the subway inside the cafeteria. That's not. I don't know if like
Good lord.
I would feel so self conscious doing that now that I'm like, there's no way I could do that.
Yeah. While people are like in line for Subway and we're doing improv.
Yeah, could you imagine just a line of people at Chipotle and it's like, can I get a one word suggestion of anything at all, please?
I remember I watched this one documentary a while ago, but Kathy Griffin was talking about how she started up doing stand up, and she goes, "So it's like you telling your jokes at like 11 a.m. to competing with a coffee machine and three guys that are studying for the bar."
Yeah, yeah.
That's kind of how it felt when we were doing that stuff.
I had done
Oh
one
my
improv
god.
show. So for those who do not know, like we did long form improv. There's another
Yeah.
which long
hmm
form improv is scenic based, so it's characters within the confines of a scene. And then what people
Correct.
typically know about improv is short form, which is like whose line is it anyway, a bunch of games. And I'm not particularly
hmm
good at that. You have to be very quick, and I'm more character based than just quick witted. Uh, but I was
hmm
invited to do a short form show by Megan Kenny. It was a paid gig, so we like each of us were getting paid like $40. So we're like, yeah, let's do it.
hmm
And we didn't know any details about it, and we thought it was going to be like we just knew it was for this guy's birthday party. Like, okay. So we thought it was like, someone rented out a hall or something, but it was actually at the guy's house. So like it
hmm
was this guy who's turning like 80, not a fan of improv, but he was
Of
turning like
course.
first.
Never asked for any of this.
No, so it was like him, this old 80-year-old man, his, wife and children, his grandchildren and great grandchildren. And this guy's just sitting on the couch, and we all walk in. We have to take our shoes off at this guy's
Uh huh.
house. And we did
Yeah.
a short form improv set in his living room with like 40 members of their family sitting in there. And uh, we found out because we did this thing called the Dream, which is a short form game to where you interview somebody and ask them about their full day, asking for specifics about, okay, you woke up, then you had breakfast. What'd you have for breakfast? You're asking very specific things. So then once they're done, you can do what their dream might look like and try to bring in funny stuff that are callbacks from what they're.
Correct. Yes.
And
Yes.
we were asking this guy, he's like, okay, what'd you do today? And he's just like, woke up, went to went to
Gave
church.
you nothing.
Right. They're like, yeah, gave us nothing at all. He's like, went to church. They're like, okay, what did they discuss at church? And he's like, I don't know. You can ask the deacon. He's right there. And we were performing in front of a deacon. And okay. And he's just like, then I came home, ate lunch. Like, what'd you have for lunch? He's like, a sandwich. Like, okay. And what'd you do after that? And he's like, watch Passion of the Christ. And we're like, okay. And then
Sweet. I can't wait to reenact this.
and and what else? And he's like, now we're here. And I'm like, all right. And so I got $40 and just shuffled home.
Nice. 2-minute mark. Yeah, those are always the worst when you're doing like a dream sequence and they just give you absolutely nothing to work with, and you're just like, God, like
That's
how
why,
am I gonna make this funny?
yeah, that's why I don't like short form at all.
Yeah,
And
me
that's
neither.
not because it's not funny. Those who can do short form well, like Whose Line Is It Anyway, is very funny. It's just it takes a very specific type of person to make that work.
Yeah, I just saw Ryan Stiles in Alex's hotel, like just sitting
Oh,
in the lobby, just hanging out.
I
He
saw
was
a
he was
picture.
doing Wordle.
He has a soul patch now. Does he still have that?
I don't remember. I just remember him playing Wordle.
You have to get pretty close to know he's playing Wordle.
I was pretty close.
Hey, Ryan Stiles.
Hey, Ryan Stiles. The password is. Dude, I just watched The Cable Guy the other day. That movie is so funny. Oh my god!
It
I
gets
forgot how
really,
funny that movie is.
yeah, it's funny, but it gets very
It's
dark
dark,
and very weird.
very dark. Yeah,
Makes me
absolutely.
uncomfortable.
Speaking of movies and TV, what good shows have you recently been watching?
I haven't. I've been watching a ton. I know you're a big fan of Succession. I've only seen
It's
maybe two,
phenomenal.
two seasons of that. It's too acerbic for me. Like I can watch like 2 episodes at a time, maybe three, and it does get very snarky, and it's very dense line wise, and so like it tires me out.
Interesting.
What are your thoughts?
Do you? I mean, you've rewatched The Sopranos 5 times,
Yes,
but
that's
you can't watch. You can't get through Succession.
no. I mean, Sopranos has. I know
It's just
you.
not. It's just not for you. That's fine.
It's not
Like
bad.
Arrested Development. That's very.
Yeah.
Arrested Development is very dense. There's a lot of jokes packed in there,
Right, but it's not
and you like Arrested
snarky.
Development.
It's not snarky.
No.
There's
So you just
and
don't like the people.
no, I like the people. I like the characters. But it's like I'm never in a mode to where I'm like, I the day's over and we sit down on the couch. I'm like, let's relax and watch some Succession. That's something you gear up
Mhm.
for. That's not something you relax into. I feel like Sopranos, you can relax into that movie. But like how people rewatch The Office, that's how I rewatch The Sopranos. Because there's
I,
something in every episode to where if you watch it, like I have the fourth time around, you
God,
find
that's so many times.
something new that you didn't see before. But we watched The Bear. We just finished season 2 of The Bear. That's
Amazing.
They filmed that show right next to Martha and I's old apartment. So this was during
Really?
COVID. Yeah. So I mean, Mr. Beef is on, what is it, Ontario? No,
Orleans, right?
Orleans. And
Yeah.
so we were off, or like off Orleans, or a branch of street is Erie, is right off
Hmm.
Orleans, and we lived at the end of
Yeah.
Erie. So we like a block or two away from this, and we remember like during COVID driving around and just seeing, buses and tractor trailers, and like, what is going on here? They must be filming something. So watching the bear, and especially those scenes at Mr. Beef, and how small that building is, and how many tractor trailers with equipment. And I'm like, how do they need that much stuff to do this?
Yeah.
But that was awesome that they filmed that there. And then I they film a lot of stuff in Chicago, because at my apartment before that in Uptown, they filmed at least an episode or more of Fargo, the season with
Hmm.
Chris Rock in it, because it was like back in the 40s.
It takes place in St. Louis too.
Oh, does it? But I walked. So I was just going to work, and I walked out onto my street one morning, and on my street there was just a bunch of classic cars, like from the 40s and 50s.
Classic
And I'm
car. I own every kind of classic car.
like, triples are best. Triples are safe. But
Triples. Triples are best.
so I was like, what's going on here? And then I walked to the next block, and it's just Broadway is completely packed. And then I found out they were filming that. And then they filmed an episode of, or a scene in Chicago Fire on my street. But I walked into the shot while holding a bag of Jimmy John's. So I was just walking back to my apartment with my order from Jimmy John's, and then just this crew member's like, stop, stop, stop. And I'm like, what? Because like the scene was just like two people in a truck. So like I knew something was going on, but nobody, like, it didn't look like they were filming at the time.
Uh
But I
huh.
thought that was kind of rude. I'm like, I live here. This isn't a movie. This is Chicago, and it's not even a good show. This is Chicago Fire that I'm
No,
holding.
not. Um. God, that's so funny that you were just like eating Jimmy John's, and they're like, "Hold, stop! These 80 people production, so this guy can eat his sandwich."
I've never watched Chicago Fire, but I do hope that I made it in, and it's just me walking around with a Jimmy John's bag.
I mean, the people who created it are probably like, God, this plot line is so shitty. Like, let's just have this guy come in with a sandwich. Maybe that
And
maybe
the
that could
sad
make it
thing is
better.
they recast me, and then it's just a full episode of Chicago Fire following this guy with Jimmy John's, and it could have been me. It could have been my big break.
They like just stole it for inspiration. God, you could have been, or you just been the spokesperson for Jimmy John's. You have a hidden talent that
Yes,
I want the people to know. So you can name all the U.S. presidents in order. Would you mind
yeah,
doing that for the people?
I can. So there's 46 as of now,
Let's hear them. Let's hear
as
them.
of August 4th, 2023. Um, so I learned it in second grade. At that point, it was just George W. Bush was the end. But I learned it in second
Wow.
grade, and my grandma would not stop talking about how impressive it was, and it was such an ego boost that I remembered it.
You're
Um,
like, this is it. This is my thing. This is like me knowing all the U.S. capitals. I was like, this is it. Like people are taking an interest in this. I will know all the capitals.
yeah,
It's just because I had a placemat where I would eat cereal every day.
and I've done it. It's become my doodle now. Like if I don't have much to do, and I'm just like sitting around, I write lists of presidents. Just because
Oh,
I
that's another thing you used to do. That's another thing you used to do. I want to mention this also when we lived together. You used to write, I mean, not one or two pieces of paper. I
yeah,
mean, like 15 to 20 separate pieces of paper with your signature on it. And you were trying to perfect the best signature. I was like, my live is like the Zodiac killer. I was like, I'd walk in, there all these papers would be all over our common
it's
room, and it would just be your signature, like repeated. I'd be like something like he's gonna like murder me in my sleep.
like
Like
The
what a
Shining.
fucking psycho.
All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. No, I do that.
It's like papers just with your just like signature. Like
Those
you
are
were
the
like,
two things. Those are the two things that I do. My brother makes fun of me for it. I think
well, he should. It's weird.
maybe, but I
Not
like.
not maybe, but trying to perfect the perfect signature with not one, five, but 20 separate pieces of paper
Oh, there's much
multiple
more than that,
times.
John. That was just in the span of a couple months that you found that. It's
I
I
know.
like penmanship. I pick up a pen. I want to doodle with it. Some like so there. That's why I don't let anybody look at my old drawing books because there will be doodles, but mixed in it will be presidents. It'll be mixed in with like I hear a word that sounds interesting and I write it down. It's like an OCD thing. I like people have to flip the
Hmm.
light switch off like 30 times. Like that's what I do.
Yeah.
But I started doing
Okay.
that with presidents, so I remember all of them. So sometimes I play a game to where if you say a number between 1 and 46, I can tell you the president, or if you tell me the president, I
Yeah.
can tell you what number they are. Um,
Hey, I um
okay.
presidents in order. Do it.
Okay. George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, James Monroe, John Quincy Adams, Andrew Jackson, Martin Van Buren, William Henry Harrison, John Tyler,
You're not looking this up, are you?
no, James K. Polk, Zachary Taylor, Millard Fillmore, Franklin Pierce, James Buchanan, Abraham Lincoln, Andrew Johnson,
Mm-hmm.
Ulysses Simpson Grant, Rutherford Bashard Hayes, James
Mm-hmm.
Garfield, Chester Allen Arthur. That's 21. 22 is Stephen Grover Cleveland. 23 is
Mm-hmm.
Benjamin Harrison. 24 is Grover
Yep.
Cleveland again. 25 is William
Wow.
McKinley.
Yes.
26 is
Correct.
Theodore Roosevelt. 27 is Howard Taft, William Howard Taft. 28
Yep.
is Thomas Woodrow Wilson.
Isn't that the guy who's isn't that the guy that was so big he couldn't fit in his bathtub?
I think that's a wives' tale, but he was the only
Oh,
president after being president was a Supreme Court justice, and he lost 100 pounds. Did you know that?
nice. I did
Yeah.
not know that.
So
Very
28
cool.
is Woodrow Wilson. 29 is Warren Gamaliel Harding. Then it's John Calvin Coolidge, Herbert Clark Hoover, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Harry
The
S.
vacuum
Truman.
guy?
Yeah, it was his dad.
Herbert Hoover? The vacuum guy? No, the president.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Harry S. Truman, Dwight David Eisenhower, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, Lyndon Baines Johnson, Richard Milhous Nixon, Gerald Rudolph Ford, James Earl Carter, Ronald Wilson Reagan, George Herbert Walker
I love that
Bush,
you know. I love that you know their middle names. It's killing me.
William Jefferson Clinton, George Walker Bush, Barack Hussein Obama, Donald
Uh-huh.
John Trump Sr., and Joseph Robinette Biden Jr.
Wow,
Thank you. Thank you. That's gotten me absolutely nothing.
that's
It's got me,
amazing.
yeah.
I
That's what
remember. I
comes
remember a
after you write.
conversation we had. It's amazing. One, that's amazing, and then two, that reminds me of a conversation we had one time at Second City, where I know we're about to do a show or something. I couldn't remember what we were doing, and I was just sitting there and just like, man, I feel like I'm a nice person, and I feel like I've been a good collaborator, and it's gotten me nowhere. Like
Hmm.
like what a waste. Like I could have just, like all those impulses were like how I wanted to react and things I wanted to say that were probably hurtful or mean or spiteful or all the negative things about your personality that don't always come out, that as an adult you suppress those.
Hmm.
Um, I was just like, being a nice person, like it's gotten me absolutely nowhere. Like I've worked really hard. I've cared about this work, and I've been
Yeah.
really nice. And they're like, oh, if you work hard and you're nice, great things happen. I go, that's bullshit. I go, what a waste. I go, and then you go, I feel the total opposite. You're like, you go, I feel that everything I've gotten in life is because I've been nice. You go, because you were like, I really have no talent at anything. You're like, so the only reason I've gotten anything is because I've been nice. And I just thought
Yeah.
it was so funny that we literally had two completely different points of view on that.
I don't remember saying that, but I
I was
do
like, it's
feel that.
gotten me nowhere, and you're like, it's gotten me everything I have,
Well, I mean,
because I have no
you can't
talent.
know that. You can't know that because if you have been nice to people and this is what your life has been and you haven't been rude. I mean, I'm sure if you just would have, succumbed to those lesser impulses, you probably would not be where you are right now. Just think
Probably
about that.
not.
Just be positive.
I could I could still be eating hot dogs in that same
Yeah, that's
apartment.
true. That's true. And if you were a mean person, you would be that person eating hot dogs in your apartment by yourself.
That's that's true. Um, I want to talk about your trip to Italy.
Yes.
And something that made me laugh really hard is so you're married to my cousin Martha. I am 100% Sicilian,
Hmm.
Italian. Like you don't get more Italian than me. One of your favorite things to do is make fun of Italians. It's literally I would say it's in your top three favorite things to do. You just love doing it.
No,
Um,
that's not.
for some reason, it's one of the few ethnicities that we can still make fun of. Like there's several that we can't make fun of, but society has just decided that we can still make fun of Italians. And you love doing it. And you were walking through Italy with Martha and her family, so my aunt and uncle and my cousins, and Emily, who's Martha's sister, my cousin Emily. Uh, she said, like, "Oh, that guy looks like John," and then your response was, "Every guy here looks like John." I'm sick of hearing it. Like every guy here looks like John. I don't want to hear it.
They do. They're all
I thought
five
that was
eight.
so funny.
They're all five
It was
eight.
so
They're
funny.
they all have
I'm 5'9". I'm 5'9" and 3/4.
wearing shoes. But correction, I don't
No,
make fun. I
that's
don't
my
like
real
making
height.
fun. I don't like making fun
I
of
think that's why
Italian.
you like. I think that's why you like The Sopranos so much, which is exactly why I can't watch that show.
I don't like making fun of Italian people. I like
Yes,
making
you
fun of
do.
you.
Just
I
just
like
own it.
no. I like making fun of you, and you are Italian. That's the difference. But
You
I
make fun
think
of our family all the time, which is fine.
I so I think
You
I
like making fun of Italians. It's
you
okay. I love
you
you
bring it out.
unconditionally. It's
You
fine.
bring it out. You bring it out in me because I know how much you don't like it, and that's a part of my brain. Whenever I know that somebody doesn't like something, I have an obnoxious streak to me, and I just can't help it.
Then I think
So
there's something else though, because why do you like this? There's something about Italians that you love to make fun of, but yet you're drawn to because you've rewatched The Sopranos five
yeah,
times.
I want to be Italian.
What
I
what
whenever we went,
what is it about that culture? And you married someone who's Italian, so what is
yeah,
it about that culture that interests you? Obviously, we are
um,
friends, so
I
you are
feel
interested
like
in it.
Italian people do not hide their emotions. They're very
No,
transparent in a great
very true.
way,
Yes,
which I
yeah.
like. And because my background is very, Protestant white.
Keep everything
So,
inside. Yeah,
yeah.
you
So,
don't talk about it. Yeah.
that
And you have a
is,
wife that if you have a wife who if something is bothering her, she will tell you
and
immediately.
it's the worst thing and the greatest thing
But it's
because I
also the
never,
best thing because then you can like great, like we can do
right.
my wife too. My wife will tell I'm probably more open than she is a little bit, but she'll let me know if something's bothering her and then we can address it.
Yeah.
It's it's
So
it's very and
it's
she's
not,
Italian.
and, I would say I'm very Irish so we did a 23andMe, my brother did, and it would be the same as what I would get. So
Uh-huh.
we're 98% like English European white,
Yeah,
but
that checks out. That
I
that
am
definitely checks out.
1% Italian. I'm 1% Italian.
That's
Um,
impossible.
no,
Like
that's what do you mean that's impossible?
how
It
can
was a
that be?
they they did back testing of who your ancestors were. I'm 1% Italian, and we did find
Uh-huh.
out that me and my brothers are 40 or more Neanderthal than 48% of the population. So,
Wow.
but no. So I went whenever we went to Italy, especially like
Where'd you go?
we went to Rome. So I went with
Awesome.
I think you had said it. So all the birds.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so we pretty much just walked around Rome for those 5 days. We went and saw the Pantheon. We saw the Colosseum. They did some shopping. We saw a bunch of churches. Um, but I think there's a lot of parallels between like Italian people and Irish people, except the specifics are different. So like Irish people love to drink. Italians love to drink. It's just a difference between beer and wine. And, at least me growing up in my family, food was a big thing. For your family, food is a ginormous thing.
Yes.
So, you know, I there's a lot about Italian people that I'm like, this feels I feel at home amongst Italian people, and I wish that I
Mm-hmm.
was. And because I'm
Well,
not,
you
I'll just
are. Now
yeah,
you are. You've been indoctrinated into our family.
yeah. But I
Are you
don't I
happy
don't
about
dis-
are you happy about that?
yes, I am. I am happy about being a part of that. I Is it weird to you that I'm married to your cousin?
No. It's
No.
awesome.
Okay.
It's an amazing feeling to have one of your best friends, one of the people that you're closest to, a person that you would choose to hang out with at
Right.
all of your family functions, even though you haven't been at the last like four.
Let's.
It's an amazing feeling. And if I'm being honest, and this is going to sound super like, there's no way this is not going to sound narcissistic, but like, I
Just
was
let
the
it out.
reason you guys met. I was
Yeah.
it. And I have to
Yeah.
credit my Uncle Kerry for giving me a specific shout out during the wedding. Like, I sometimes I'll look at you and I'll look at Martha and especially Eli and I go, I
I'm the
did that.
reason. Of course you do.
But
So
I,
whenever
but but I did. I did.
I know you
I know
did,
it. I
but
get it. I know it sounds super narcissistic, but when I look at your son, I
oh,
literally the first thing that came to my mind, other than the fact that he literally has your face, I go,
mhm.
I thought of two things. One, this looks exactly like Jake, and two, I made this happen.
That doesn't seem narcissistic at all.
Yeah, I know. Those are
That's
my
why
first two thoughts. One, it looks
whenever
like Jake. Two, I made this happen.
whenever Martha and I were talking about potential baby names, I just told her I'm like, John, like as a first or middle name cannot be in it. I go because well, I mean, one, there's 5 people in your family named John. Two,
No, there's
John
not. There's two. There's two.
John already has a huge. There's 10 Nicks. There's 5 Johns.
There's one Nick. There's two Johns.
Okay. Anyway, but I go, he doesn't need a bigger head than he already has about this, so we can't do it.
Was she considering John,
I've been sworn to secrecy on any
or did you,
conversation.
or did you just throw down the meaningless gauntlet and say, "Hey, before we get into this,
That
John's
one,
off the table as a name"?
the latter.
Oh my god, that's fantastic. Well, I love you, buddy. Thanks so much for doing this. Super happy that you are a part of our family. Um, we couldn't be more pleased and thrilled, and super happy for your new son Eli, who's absolutely adorable. And I will see you at my sister's wedding in a month, or a
Yes, sir.
little more than a month, but you will be there, right?
Yeah, that's the
Fantastic.
plan. Thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to be a reoccurring guest. Maybe the Ed McMahon to your Johnny Carson, or you know what? I'm Johnny Carson. You're Ed McMahon.
No, you can't do that. I'm the host. Know your
I'm
role
I'm Howard
and shut your
Stern.
mouth.
You're that guy Gary that does stuff in the background.
What or Robin?
Ah, no.
You're the Robin to my Batman. It's fine. Thanks. But wait, well, 1 second.
Yes.
This podcast is sponsored by the book Shitty Jobs, The Guide to Surviving the Recession. My dad just told me he's sick of that ad read. He told me specifically not to do that anymore. He
Tell
goes,
your dad I said hi.
stop doing that. But I can't. The book Shitty Jobs, it's available on Amazon, Google Books. Check it out. It's a phenomenal book. Thanks, everybody. Jake Sellers, everyone. Take care.